See the unseen. See the unseen. There's so many things that we don't see in our country, in our industry, in our families, in our communities, and yet we are part of them. So today we're starting a discussion, a conversation around what it is that we don't see, so that we're able to see it and openly challenge what we see and correct what needs to be corrected in our communities. So I won't delve into the details of that. Our speakers of the day, the panel, will break that down for each and every one of us. I'd like to end my remarks here and hand over to the next speaker, who will be... Okay, thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Walter. I would love to correct Walter's title and reintroduce him. I gave him a lower rank than he should be having. Apologies for that. He's the General Manager, Brainchild BCW, and he's my boss. Thank you so much, Walter. I hope my salary is still safe. All right. In the interest of time, we'll go right straight into the discussion that has brought us here. We need to discuss the unseen. We need to discuss the difficult conversations. They are necessary for us to move forward. So I would love to introduce the panel session and have our panelists step onto the stage. I'll start with Dr. Miche Gwang, who is going to be the moderator for this session this morning. Thank you so much. Okay. His presence is just too strong that the banner had to bow to him. All right. I'll have Mr. James Onen, aka Fat Boy, commonly known as Fat Boy, but we're glad to have you here and glad to be part of this panel session. Yes, kindly walk over to the stage. Okay. And he'll be followed by Ms. Tina Wamala. Thank you so much, Ms. Tina Wamala, for being part of this session this morning. Ms. Tina Wamala is currently with the British Council, and she's the communications officer at that big institution. Then we'll have okay. All right, then we'll have Miss Josephine. Yes, thank you so much, Josephine, for joining us this morning. Okay, Miss Josephine Movumba is with us here today. And she works with the Metropolitan Republic. Glad to have you here. Yes, and we'll have Mr. David Galukande, part of the panel session as well. We're glad to have you here this morning. Representing QG Group. Yes, thank you so much, and I'll hand the mic over to the moderator to take us through. Great.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, that's a technical, it's a technical habit. Sometimes I'm still speaking. Sound good now? All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So my name is Dr. Ronnie Mechegwang. I'll be the moderator for this session. And I think it's only fair, I think in the spirit of not speaking to strangers. That's something my mother always taught me. So it's important to get to know everybody. So I think let's start with the extreme left. I'd like to introduce David Galukande, who is the current MD of QG Group, which has been in existence for almost 2 decades. A lot of people in the advertising space would call him an advertising dinosaur, but he possesses a lot of skills in advertising and communications. Really, David, really, David. Yeah? So let's give a round of applause to David.
and what attracts them the most, what appeals to them the most. And if it's a sexy young girl crossing the street, that's what you push. And the reverse is true, because gender issues are not just about men, it's relations between men and women.
I agree.
So even women in agencies have perpetuated the social codes and social structures that we're used to, that a woman is supposed to receive money from her husband, the man is the man who works. If you look at adverts in the telecom industry, mobile money adverts, it's always the son sending the judger or the mother money. Why can't the reverse be true? Because we've been conditioned as society to believe that...
First, wait, just to derail for that. So you mean your judger sends you money?
She doesn't, I send her money.
Okay. Just wanted to be sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I get what you're saying. So Josephine, would you say that there's equal representation, first of all, in the playing field when it comes to having these discussions, when it comes to ad creation?
Definitely not. I think, so for example, there are traditional departments like account management, traffic management, media, where you will find a lot of women. But when you get into creative, because of I would say the demands in terms of, there's no work-life balance, and most women at some point have to, they don't go home to flip channels. They actually go home to cook and take care of kids and things like that. So definitely there's always usually a dominant male, creative is really male mostly, and has been for a long period of time. And so because of that, you find that an ad is created by a man, and then it's produced and executed by men throughout the whole chain. No woman has really had a say on what it is. So you find, I saw a statistic we do. So I do think that we don't have a seat at the table, and then we also, how we're portrayed and represented in the ads is not really accurate to today's woman.
Okay. We could talk about this all day, but I want to get into a little bit of a deeper topic. Maybe, David, if you could tell me now, in the advertising sector, how would you say that gender-based violence is manifested?
First of all, the nature of the advertising industry is quite maverick and quite permissive in so many ways, right? So you find that you need to match to a certain tune, but also there's a lot.
What do you mean by the word permissive?
In that, basically we don't work like accountants. We can smoke in the office.
So we
okay, not anymore, but and do
so basically
crazy things. Play loud music.
Before you say anything, you're giving me a disclaimer.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's hear what he has to say.
So there's the late nights, the long parties, but actually fundamentally it's about the sensitivities in the category. I think men that run advertising in a way have not been very sensitive to women's issues and have not really been listening for years and years. That's really the issue.
I want concrete examples. He has decided to be politically correct, and he is tolerated around the point. Maybe James, you can be a man and say the things, huh?
Yeah.
Since David's scared, huh?
All right, so I've only recently become an employer of a team that...
You don't have to pause, but we understand. But proceed. Proceed with the presentation, yes.
The hustle started recently. For me, right? Anyway, and my team is predominantly female. And I've been asked about this, and I've never really been able to give a clear answer as to why it's mostly women, partly because they, from my experience at least, seem to be the most ambitious ones. They're the ones constantly reaching out, asking to have meetings, to discuss ideas, to discuss opportunities. So just over time, the team has grown to where I look around and, wow, there's a lot of ladies. Now, I love having them there. They offer a lot of value. The challenge, though, that I've faced, and it's something I've had to learn, is in how to communicate. So with my male staff, like if there is an issue that requires immediate attention, I just walk in, walk out, end of story. Or I can just shoot off an email devoid of pleasantries, just to the point. And yet I've come to understand that ladies have a different frequency with which they would prefer to communicate, such that direct and confrontational conversations can come across as scary, or do you know what I mean? They take greater offense, and in some cases they may come away feeling violated. You know, like, hey, he's being harsh to me. He's not considerate of my feelings. He doesn't know what I'm going through. And, you know, it's just a few steps removed from that to, you know, a possible harassment allegation where someone is feeling as though she is constantly being emotionally abused. And yet in your head, you're thinking, I'm just the boss that gets to the point, it demands that work be done, sort of thing, right? So I've had to come to understand how to approach communication with women. And this is where it's a bit tricky, because it almost unfortunately comes across as patronizing, but maybe you can advise me on this. But if I have to be more careful and more sensitive in my how I work with the female creatives, then does that mean I treat them more with kid gloves than I would, say, a male person in that space with whom I can be more direct and confrontational, especially because this creative space is a high-pressure space, high-stakes space. Your clients are abusing you, threatening to pull out contracts, threatening to cancel accounts and all this kind of stuff because they don't like the ad that you did, or they don't like the how long you took to make it. They want the campaign to start tomorrow. And so you want to barge into that creative office and just scream at everyone to get the work done. And if there's ladies in there, you do risk offending them, and they will come away feeling like the workplace is a hostile environment. So I've had to try to find a balance in how I approach that kind of.
I saw Josephine grab the mic from David, huh? And it's like these guys here don't know what they're talking about, huh? Let me show them. Let me stop being superficial and get visceral. So why don't you give me candid examples?
What I wanted to say, and I think it's one of the best pieces of advice I ever received about managing. And my boss said to me, "You don't manage the employee; you manage the person." And when I say that, I mean whether they're a man or a woman or whatever they choose to identify as. You manage the individual. There are some women who you will directly say, move your butt, get this done, and they will be fine with it.
You use that terminology?
Sure.
In your office?
Sure, I don't, but I could.
Okay.
I don't, but I could.
Just wanted to quote you here. Please,
Yeah.
kindly
I mean,
strike that from the record.
But what I'm saying is that there are some women you can directly speak to. There are some men you also have to be aware of their egos and not take them down a notch in front of other people,
I hear
and
what
so
you're
on and
saying.
so forth.
Yes, I do hear what you're saying, and you're right. Everyone's unique, and some people are more sensitive than others. So, but if you're dealing with large numbers of people, can you understand how one might feel inclined to kind of deal in generalities? Like if let's say, you could have your one or two boss ladies in there who can take it and can dish it out and who are tough. And then you've got the rest of them that maybe are a little more, Now, it's not always easy to say, okay, this one's like this, that one's like that, that one's like that, that one's like that. So you have to keep calibrating your communication methods with each staff member. And as ideal as that may sound, given the economy of time, it may be a challenge. So you kind of just end up, in my case anyway, saying, all right, he's a dude. I feel more comfortable being direct with him. And here might be a lady, and so I might feel more comfortable, approaching things in a more indirect or a lot more calmly or with a bit more finesse. Now, does that mean the boss lady is going to take offense and be like, hey, you can give it to me straight?
Like if I was to interrupt you right now, you see, I'm being direct and straight.
Yeah.
You see? But imagine if that's still too superficial for me. I want something tangible. Do you, from both of your experiences, both as women, have you had any gender-based examples or experiences from the past, even if it's not general? Let's start with Tina, and then I'll come back to you, Josephine. Have you had any?
Yes, I hear what James is saying about approaches between male bosses to female employees and vice versa. And I think it's a character thing, so I do kind of agree with what Josephine is saying. So in my advertising world or advertising history, we would get very confrontational with our general managers, with our bosses, creative directors, etc., because the pressured environment required us to kind of have a very, very thick skin.
Correct.
So you're almost expected to just live with it, to survive, to do what you have to do. Because there's no time to be sensitive, there's no time to be too feminine, for lack of a better word. Similar to what she said earlier, you kind of have to roll with the punches. It's either that or you move out of the environment. So you have to make a decision, and I chose to roll with the punches.
So basically you're saying that you chose to keep your job, you decided that you were going to be too thick-skinned to violence? Is that what you were saying?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying...
Because my question was, I want a candid example of your past. Have you ever had instances of gender-based violence happen to you?
No, not...
Josephine?
I think for me, personally, I can tell you two stories that I would classify as gender-based violence. The first one was I was being sexually harassed by a client. And when I went to my male MD, not David.
David,
I went to
the hero.
I went to my male MD. He had already heard about it from the client himself, who had advocated for him to pressure me to go out with him.
Okay.
So
basically, this is the story which we keep hearing about taking one for the. No, I'm not saying I heard the story.
Yes, okay.
No, Josephine. Hello. No. It's something that actually people will not. You might not want to accept this, but it happens a lot. If I would like to maintain the account, take one for the team. Go out with them, have a drink, huh? But keep it, string them along. You agree with what I'm saying, huh?
You find yourself between a rock and a hard place.
Yes.
Because you want to keep the client happy.
Yes.
And you ask yourself, it's just a drink.
Correct.
Can it hurt? Should it hurt? Will it hurt? But there are repercussions. Because if you say no to him, at the end of the day...
Impacts on the business.
Impacts on the business. But if you say yes, and things go by the wayside later, it will still... So there's so many risks.
So your boss had already heard about it.
Yes.
And
he advocated quite clearly. He said, go out with him, date him. He didn't say string him along. He said, make him happy. So
one for the team. Uh-huh.
So unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that. First of all, I mean, it was just not going to happen. So I dealt with it the way I think most women have learned the dance of not alienating a man, but, letting him down easy and all of that stuff. And to this day, I'm actually friends with that client.
Great.
So I maintain the friendship and the client, but I give that as an example because of the way I felt and experienced that with my boss advocating for me to do something that I felt was completely wrong.
Understandable.
Yeah.
And the second example?
The second example was a similar thing, but this was sexual harassment from a coworker. I was a young intern and being harassed by someone who was in another department from me. And I told my female boss. I didn't snitch. I actually just said, this guy, it was more like just a conversation. I didn't know what she was going to do with that. She went straight to him and she warned him off. And he came and apologized to me. And he didn't actually understand what he was doing was harassment. But, commenting about the way somebody looks constantly, making them feel uncomfortable all the time, trying to touch them, that kind of thing, was definitely harassment. And he learned that, and he apologized to me, and we, to this day, we're friends. So I think, for me, those are the two instances where I can say, I'm sure every woman here has a story like that, or more, or worse.
So David, seeing that you're in a senior executive position, what recommendations do you think you need to be put in place if you don't already have them in place to avoid instances like this or to promote zero tolerance to to gender-based violence in workplaces?
I think quite simply, because it's really behavior change, we need to drive a lot more awareness. I mean, Josephine just said some people didn't even know it was, you know, what it was, right?
That's true.
So one, there's listening, and then a lot of awareness and continuous awareness and consciousness. And then we need to make sure GBVs in our policies in a big way as well.
And James, seeing that you're now a fresher CEO in the making, with a high percentage of women in your workspace now, what have you done proactively to make sure that GBV is actually frowned upon in an organization, and that all the processes and the systems promote zero tolerance to it?
Well, I've communicated that we have an open channel of communication. So any slight feeling of discomfort, if any woman feels that, they're supposed to communicate that directly to me. When it comes to potential risk of harassment from clients, I normally encourage them to not visit any clients unaccompanied,
Yes.
to go with a team member, because then that sort of reduces the risk of those situations that could lead to requests for dates or direct assault. So she should always go with a teammate so that there's less chance of that happening. And so those are some of the steps we're taking to mitigate against that kind of violence.
Okay. So Tina, seeing that you represent PROW, is there any way that you think that the advertising sector can actually be more committed towards gender equality and making sure that there's elimination of GBV?
Absolutely. I think it's more than a numbers game. It's more than an equality game. It's actually an inclusion game. And Josephine touched on this. With campaigns, with employees within the workspace, it's about including both voices, ensuring the message resonates across genders. It's not dominated by one specific gender, but ensuring that we get away from the stereotypical portrayals and messaging and whatnot. And that comes with ensuring that inclusion is involved, inclusion of voices from the different genders is included. And also to add the fact that one of the most important things to do now is maybe come up with things like seminars, symposiums, workshop across the genders to say, look, how can we ensure we eradicate this bias? How can we ensure that we promote gender equality, not just in our messaging, but also in promotions and etc. And the only way to do that is by involving both genders so that they're aware of common mistakes that they make.
Awesome.
Am I allowed to ask a question?
Who is the question directed to? Because you are supposed to be answering. We're supposed to be asking you questions. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. Huh?
Okay, so currently in the West, particularly in America, there's a bit of a cultural war going on where there is, I guess, a move towards a more progressive mindset. You might call it wokeism, is how some people call it, to raise awareness about race issues, gender issues, and so forth. And many marketing and advertising firms have tried to incorporate this in a lot of their messaging. And so over the years, we've seen a number of controversial adverts that kind of attempt to preach to the audience. Gillette ran into a lot of trouble when they put out an ad campaign, treat women with respect, stop your toxic masculinity. And on one hand, all right, maybe they had good reasons for that. It might have had a good cause, but the backlash was quite severe. The men to whom the ad was targeted felt insulted. And this applies to other forms of communication that try to have conversations incorporated into the messaging. So my question really is, how do you imagine an advertising agency or even a company offering a product or service ought to strike that balance? Is there a risk of being too preachy to where you turn off your customers or your clients' customers to where your campaign fails? Or do you do so regardless anyway because you might feel you're serving a higher cause? What do you think about that, Josephine?
So I think, first of all, I talked about allies, and I think that is the thing that we need to we're not demonizing men to say, men are trash or all men do this, or we're just saying, help us to have a better world. And I think that's where it should come from. I saw the Gillette work, and I felt that the Gillette work didn't strike the chord of being really authentic in terms of the brand itself, and the way they communicated to men was talking down to men. Yet I think most men are aware of pretty much most of the issues women are facing, but it's about including them in the conversation and including them with the education part of it. You're doing this wrong, but saying, how can we make the world better? And I think that's the note you need to strike.
So in other words, it's about how you engage
Yeah.
and communicate. And sometimes if you go overboard, it might backfire. So you kind of have to strike a balance of...
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Back to you, sir.
Thank you. It's a problem with giving radio DJs the mic, huh? I want to take over. Please stay in your lane. Fakumudala go. So, we are just about to do a couple of closing statements, and then we'll open it up to have a couple of questions, seeing that you're itching to say something. Don't worry, your opportunity is coming up. So I think the essence of today's panel discussion was to stimulate discussion, to start us on a journey whereby, you see, we're able to talk about gender-based violence in the workplace, in the marketing sector, in the advertising space, because I tell you truthfully, just up here on the stage, these individuals impact millions of Ugandans every single month. So you imagine if the entire sector gets on board. So what I'd like to do is to give each of you 1 to 2 minutes to give us your parting shots, and then I'll open it up to the audience for 5 minutes, and then we'll hand it back to Denise. So, David.
Yeah, well, for me, it's about let's engage, let's listen, and let's raise the consciousness.
I mean, I think really this has been a great discussion, and it's just, I think, food for thought, really, for all of us to go back and see how we can help promote, the agenda that we have on the table, which is really about equity for both genders, and to make sure that we have a better industry on the whole. Thank you.
Yeah, so for me, there are really underlying systemic issues we have to deal with in terms of representation of women and men, and that comes right down from culture to theory to practice. But inclusion, for me, is where it starts, for us to get on this journey of equality, including the female voice, the male voice, for knowing that gender is not just about men versus women, but it can also be the other way around. So we have to be conscious of each other's biases and ensure that we are awake to them and are willing to evolve.
I think that we all need to work hard towards creating a safe space for women to feel comfortable. They are a very potent creative force and have revolutionized advertising, marketing, and the creative space. As David said, many of the fantastic campaigns you've seen have been conceptualized and executed by females in the field, and so we need more of them there. I very much benefit from their presence in my environment, and so I'd like to call on any company, any business, any institution to work towards creating that environment so that women can feel safe in expressing their ideas and in pursuing their aspirations.
Awesome. All right, so I'd like to open up the conversation to the general public and anybody who's got any questions. Denise, probably if you could help us walk the mic.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to the...
Just who you are and the question, just for...
I work at PSFU. I wanted to respond to the Gillette ad by, I guess, borrowing the learnings from the Nike ad, which chose to celebrate the voice of women. If you remember how Serena had a backlash about her outburst and everything, and Nike decided to champion her and said, she had a right to have voice, to express herself, and it also emulated. Everyone has, I think Semenya has been controversial, but they decided to celebrate the fact that she's chosen to be who she is, and they really made a big deal out of it, and it received discussion. So I think from an advertising perspective, the idea that you choose to run with could attract a backlash or could actually work for you. These guys chose the positive approach to celebrating women and empowerment as opposed to attacking the guys.
All right, thank you, Grace.
Morning once again. My name is Patience Ahewa, and I'm a feminist and a PR executive here with Prowess Advertising. Sorry. I'm going to still talk about addressing the customer audiences with different campaigns regarding GBV. Men have never been gentle with the way they communicate with women in anything. If you're a woman here, you agree with me. Even when you walk through town, no one has ever said or called you by your name. They'll say sister, size young. They've never been gentle, so why must we be gentle in our fight against GBV? But that's not to take away what some men could be. When we say all men are trash, please don't put that in there, but I'm just quoting. We're not saying that every man is bad, but most. So when we sit at a panel and say we must be gentle with our fight, I don't believe in it. Imagine what our grandmothers' mothers had to go through to fight for the top spaces in this corporate world. So I don't believe in being gentle with our fight. If we must come out and address men's egos because they're affected by what Gillette said, that's them, but we mustn't. I believe in creative. There's something that was said about women having to adopt to survive by the lady over there. Why must we turn ourselves into who we are and such kind of adopt into a man's world? If we're intentional with our campaigns, it's not going to just stop here at discussions. In our offices, in our different positions, if we're in the place where we can create change, let's be intentional with it, because then it's just going to remain a microphone topic. It's not a first of discussions to happen. Our mothers have had it, our great-great-grandmothers. So if we're not intentional with the initiatives, we are going to hold these discussions until Jesus returns. So let us not be enablers of being gentle. Right now we are actually very, very gentle, because if we speak about what the feminists used to do back then, in the 1800s, where they would actually chop down men and kill them, then honestly we'll just go to prison and create our own world as women. Maybe then we could be better. But seriously, I don't think we should be gentle in any initiative that we take as men or women in bigger positions, because there are also some women who enable GBV in our workplace. That's true. So in whatever you do, please don't be gentle, because this is a cruel world, and if women are now positioned to just adapt and change the way their structure is, just so they can be in different spaces, then honestly, there's no need for gentility. Thank you.
Wow, powerful words. But I know others. If we were an RX, you would be having a field day, James, huh? But I'm going to ask you to restrain yourself, huh? Because you've been brought here in another capacity.
I'm sure her boss will say, "Hey, did you mean me as well? Am I one of the?"
So Walter, I think you need to have discussions with your employees. Huh? I'll take two more questions, and then yes, let's have one question, Robert. Let's have Robert there, and then there's another hand in the front here.
Thank you. This is a very beautiful conversation, and should be happening a lot more regularly. I'm Robert Waweru from Saladin Media Advertising Limited. Some realities we need to face. One, the advertising industry portrayal of women. That has to change. And in my experience, a lot of clients are moving away from typical stereotyping of women negatively, and having a more human outlook of gender issues. When you don't do that and don't have that guided from an industry perspective, then that's how violence comes in, at the workplace, at the home, because the woman starts becoming an object. Number two, from workplace perspectives. Sometimes you get to hear a lot about how people say, I'm very happy with ladies. Sorry, I'm not talking about, they support me. I leave the office to support me. But very few conversations exist in many of those companies about how those women can rise to your position. And we move to a different level and have to run the operation. And maybe that is language we need to start having within our market. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Robert. Question here at the front. Oh, the hand disappeared. I think people got intimidated by Fat Boy. Any other questions? If not, I'd like to ask that we all give a round of applause to all of our panelists. And we consider this just as the first step on our journey of 1,000 miles. We've taken the first step. Let's get the conversations going. Let's put in place different processes and systems in our workplaces to ensure that GBV is frowned upon. And let's change the narrative. Because just like Robert said, that we need to change stereotypes. But interestingly, you see, as agencies, you're not going to be able to change those stereotypes if the audience wants that. So I think it starts with each of us. So if each of us is not interested in that anymore, I think that's when the agencies can start generating different content. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and God bless to all of you.
Thank you so much, our dear panelists. Thank you so much, Dr. Mitch, for moderating this session. Quite interesting conversations over here. I think we'll keep having more of these, but also not only having them, but acting upon them. So thank you, guys. At this juncture, I'll invite our group CEO, Frank Muthusi, to give us some remarks as well. Please give him a round of applause as he gets up.
Good morning, everybody. I had a speech after this conversation here. Decided to just, forget about the speech and let's just discuss. So I want to observe all protocols. Grace, nice to see you again in your different capacity. Beatrice, UNDP, advertising practitioners. Happy to see you, all of you guys. And also Fireworks guys, UAA Exco, both incoming and outgoing, and members of the press. So the issue of GBV has always been, should I say, at our hearts. And how did we end up here today? So long story short, we see an ad in the print, in the newspapers by PSFU. Together with Raymond. Where is Raymond? Raymond is not around. So we meet, we discuss, and we're like, you know what? Let us try our luck. Because the issue of GBV, and that's the idea we had. In advertising, like you've heard, gender-based violence happens a lot, whether knowingly or unknowingly. Like, let's put in our proposal. Let us see if we shall be lucky enough to win the grant. And guess what? We won the grant. So to that, I would like to thank PSFU UNDP through the Spotlight initiative. You can imagine how those brainstorms were. I mean, Martha was in that brainstorm together with other feminists. And then you have, the creative directors, the business unit heads who are very male, maverick. So the conversation, the debate was very, very intense. But I'm happy we're here today. I also double up as the Uganda Advertising Association chair. And so where else the conversation started as a fireworks thing, it's like, why don't we make this thing an industry thing? Because it's happening. It's happening. Whether we are saying it or not, it's like happening. So I'm happy that, they say agencies don't collaborate. Today we have agencies here. So yeah, good stuff. And to the guys who managed to come, Saladin, Robert Waweru, I can see Annette from MAD, Stella, Cleverbox. I want to thank all of you for showing up. Yeah, there are clients who are also taking a stand. I know the target market, this is what, they say sex sells, but where we're going, and there are clients who are taking a stand, and I think they're calling it progressive marketing. There are clients who are taking a stand, and I think we need to take a stand as them. And I think as an association, we'll be preaching this, and probably you'll be seeing more of progressive marketing coming from associations, coming from the agencies which are in the Uganda Advertising Association. Now, we have 15 member agencies in Uganda Advertising Association. Guess how many are at the helm? Guess how many female CEOs or MDs we have at the helm? Any idea? Yes, just 2 out of 16. And these are just the registered ones. You can imagine the many more who are not yet registered. So the gender inequality in advertising is real. And we have started the journey. Now, something I also want to thank UNDP for is once we won this grant and doing this campaign, we also kind of qualified to enter into a gender equality certification seal. I want to talk about it because I feel other agencies, other organizations that are here, the gender equality certification seal, they come to your organization, you do your own audits, you see where you are on this fight on GBV and gender equality. Then every year, they will come and audit. You set milestones and targets, and every year they'll come and audit you, and you see how are you progressing in this gender equality thing. And they give should I say medals? I think the highest one is gold, if I'm not mistaken, the gold certification. So I want to encourage every agency leader, whatever organization you're in, just try and get in touch with UNDP. I feel this certification program is like really good. Yeah, with those few remarks, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the launch.
Thank you so much, Frank, for those remarks. At this juncture, I'll invite Beatrice Mugambe, the Senior Gender Specialist from UNDP, to give us a couple of remarks as well as our keynote speaker for the day. Oh, okay. Great, thank you. So let me have Grace come through first.
Thank you very much. Hey, we know who is bankrolling this event, so we must follow the protocol. Good morning. Ms. Beatrice Mugambe, who's representing the resident representative at UNDP, the CEO, Fireworks, representatives from government, CEOs from the advertising agencies present, various media houses represented, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Grace Nshamere Gwaku. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at PSFU. In my previous life, I was the client. And I think Waweri was talking about how you guys used to have cross-agency drinks and probably bitch about clients who are difficult. I might have been one of those. But I'm really excited to see old flames around. Frank is one of them, Stella, Josephine, Metropolitan. It's good to see you. Patience, hi. Yeah, I feel like I'm at home, Mitch. Yeah. And I'm really excited because PSFU has recently created a sector called the Creative Arts, and that is the place where I think you guys can play. And yeah, it will be exciting times for you guys. But let me first go through the formalities. I bring you greetings from the board, management, and everyone at PSFU. Just in case you don't know, especially for the young people in the room, if you don't know about PSFU, we are the apex body of the private sector associations in Uganda, comprising of over 300 members, so member associations. So we exist to support private sector, we exist to turbocharge economic growth. We are advocates for the private sector, so we interact with the government, championing private sector causes. And we are also very passionate about building the capacity of the private sector. Like I mentioned, we've got 13 sectors. There used to be 12. Now with the creative arts, it's 13. So if you are in agriculture, manufacturing, ICT, oil and gas, agribusiness, services, which include banks, health, education, you're one of us, yeah? So I think just to talk about this whole gender-based violence issue, I was shocked when I looked at the numbers. 22% of Ugandan women aged between 15 and 49 have experienced a form of sexual violence. So if you're looking at 5 women here, one of us has experienced sexual violence. When you quantify it in absolute figures, 1 million female Ugandans have experienced a form of sexual violence. That's one too many. And that means we're dealing with issues, eh? People who are walking around have issues. I was just whispering to Beatrice that we probably need to create a call center for counseling women, so that if you've experienced this sexual violence, you know you can call 077 and have someone counsel you and help you deal with the situation, because it does leave people mentally and emotionally impacted. We pay a high price as a result of gender-based violence. There's lost work days, absenteeism, low productivity, foregone entrepreneurial talent, the cost of providing essential services to victims, of course, not mentioning the severe detrimental effects on individual women, men, their families, and the society at large. The economists have actually quantified this for Uganda and have estimated that Uganda loses about 77.5 billion annually as a result of this domestic violence, yeah? So, as a country, we need to start, these dialogues and putting in place together a plan to really address these issues. So we've been, as PSFU, we've been at the forefront of promoting gender equality and empowering women through collectively influencing and supporting efforts of individual private sector companies and members by tackling the gender-based violence. And I think one of them is education, really. We all come from different backgrounds. Sometimes some people don't know what sexual violence is, like Josephine was saying. You know, a guy touching your butt might think that's not violence or harassment and thinks that's okay. Because, okay, if you're my age, you know that if you would walk through that taxi park like someone mentioned, hey man, if you're wearing a short skirt, the whistles, the what, you would be, harassed literally before you go to your home. And that seemed to be okay. Yeah, some men thought that was okay. So someone has to come out and tell them, guys, it's not okay to whistle at a chick, to touch her, to touch her body parts or anything like that. And I think we need to start that journey of education. So I just wanted to respond to Martha that I'm not sure using violence to fight violence works. We may have to educate, but also highlight the consequences, of this gender-based violence. So I think this is the journey. There's much more for us to do in this space. Private sector employing about 80% of Uganda's workforce has a job to do in order to create awareness about this violence at work. So I really want to thank and appreciate UNDP country office for the continuous support to strengthen the institution, most especially in the areas of gender equality, gender-based violence, sexual harassment at the workplace. So may I request you to actually give UNDP a round of applause for starting this conversation. Pass on our thanks and gratitude to LC. So I think just to give you a bit of an update, we've educated about, when we kicked off this campaign, we managed to get about 90 companies to sign up for this program, to commit to ensure that they promote the campaign. And we've conducted training of about 32 trainers so far, who are supposed to train other people, and this is still ongoing. So as I mentioned, this forum is a great example of creating the conversation, starting that conversation to talk about these issues, because it's in sharing stories that sometimes we learn and discover how to deal with the issues. So one of the areas, or some of the areas where we paid close attention to in terms of employment was the mining area. If any of you has been involved in construction, you know that those women who break the stones go through some of the challenges. It's not an easy place to work. Even the market vendors have been very vulnerable. Sometimes it's the authority that comes to arrest them that in the process takes advantage, but also the supervisors. Basically, those that have even had to work throughout the night are very vulnerable. So part of our initiatives have been training, economic empowerment, also trying to teach them value addition so that they do not have to be at the end of that value chain. So we are excited to actually launch this campaign officially. I think we've been doing things under the radar. Now that Fireworks is kicking off the above the line component, we're excited that it will get the visibility that it deserves and that will trigger that conversation. So we congratulate you upon winning the grant and upon leading this campaign, but also for being able to gather all the industry leaders or captains to sit here and have a conversation about this. And hopefully we'll be able to see it come to life, not only at the workplace, but also through the communication. Because you guys influence the culture in this country. Whatever you say, we follow. If it's a joke, we will laugh. If it's serious, we will take it seriously. So we look to you to influence the behavior and culture in Uganda. So ladies and gentlemen, I take this opportunity to thank you for being part of this campaign to create awareness about gender-based violence against women and girls in Uganda. And I want to emphasize PSFU's commitment to this noble cause of addressing gender-based violence at work. And I thank UNDP in a special way for partnering with us on this cause. And I look forward to working with you in furthering the campaign. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Grace. Those were quite lovely remarks to have from you. I now take this juncture to invite Ms. Beatrice, our keynote speaker for the day, yes, to come and crown the event.
Thank you very much, Denise. Before I get to the remarks of my resident representative, I would like to commend the panel that was here in the morning. I was able to learn quite a lot in terms of what happens behind the scenes before we see an advert out there. And of course, when David explained the hours that they take to come up with a product, I could see some of the environments that can trigger sexual harassment. And so it takes a lot of guts or courage for some people to resist, especially the male leaders of the groups to resist doing it, but also the females in the team to avoid it. So those are some of the environments where certain things happen, the ones we are talking about. But also during the day, those things happen. And so the discussion highlighted some of those environments and the honest conversation about what needs to be done. So thank you very much. And I hope that Fireworks has picked some of the issues that might not be as part of the campaign to see that they are entrenched. For instance, as Grace mentioned, when, is it Martha, made her submission, you could see that one of the things that we need could be some mechanism where people can offload or report. James talked about the openness of the policy at your place. Maybe sometimes we fear to come to the boss's offices. If something happens to me, I might fear to come to your office to say, Frank did this to me. So, but I would trust if there's another mechanism where I could just go and talk about it. And I trust that mechanism to be able to handle the complaint before it gets to you. So yes, the openness is good, but then some of the issues we are talking about are quite sensitive. You don't know what the boss will say or whether he will act. Josephine already mentioned she talked to the boss and the boss didn't act. Or somehow his action was, come on, do it. So you want that mechanism which has gone through a bit of mentoring, awareness raising. They will not tolerate anything that borders on harassment or discrimination. So some of those things, if they are not already in the campaign, it could be nice if they are integrated, or it could be nice if along the way, since fireworks is part of the gender equality seal, to see that they are part of that other arrangement. So please allow me to go back to the remarks of my resident representative. And I will read them as they're prepared. Leaders of the private sector organizations present here, representatives from civil society and the media, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted and greatly honored to join you at the launch of the campaign, Gender-Based Violence in the Advertising Industry, Seeing the Unseen. It helped us to discuss opportunities that are presented in this industry and how the different stakeholders such as government, private sector, development partners can collaborate to position the private sector as an enabler to transform change, especially regarding discriminatory gender norms and practices in businesses. And we see the private sector also as a critical partner in the achievement of sustainable development goals. I must point out here, we worked a lot with Raymond and Denise and Frank in preparation of all this. But I wanted to point out here is that we should see ourselves, I'm talking about private sector, see yourselves as contributing to the sustainable development goals. Don't see this campaign as something for private sector, Foundation Uganda and UNDP. No. When you do this, I hope at some point when we are evaluating the SDGs, you'll be able to say we are part of this. By passion, by calling, but not because maybe there was a grant. So we see you as a critical partner in the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly SDG 5 on gender equality. I congratulate Fireworks Advertising for emerging as a winner of this innovation challenge and leading by example in developing an initiative to prevent and respond to gender-based violence within the industry. I also thank the European Union, United Nations Family, the Private Sector Foundation for championing the implementation of the Spotlight Initiative. Let me now briefly talk about the Spotlight Initiative. For those who don't know, just quickly, this is a global campaign, a global initiative led by the European Union, the United Nations, the UN, and it's a multi-year program. We are in the 4th year of this program. It started in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. And we call it the Spotlight Initiative, focusing on eliminating violence against women and girls and harmful practices, where we talk about female genital mutilation, trafficking in persons, trafficking girls for sexual exploitation, and a number of interventions. Uganda happens to be one of the countries that are benefiting from this initiative. And I want to mention that we are working with a range of stakeholders. We are working with the government of Uganda on this. And I must mention that we are working with a number of ministries, departments, and agencies. For this audience, maybe I might mention the ministry that UNDP, the ministries that we work with. We work with Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. We work with Ministry of Local Government. We work with Ministry of Internal Affairs. We work with Ministry of Public Service. Yes, Ministry of Energy, minerals and means of energy and minerals development. And you might ask why? Because violence is all over. It's not only in private sector, even in government, even in civil society, everywhere. But we see that government has structures, mechanisms that have to be improved upon so that they deliver interventions that respond to that. But also our government provides the budget, the plans and budgets, which should include resources to fight gender-based violence. So some of these ministries are engaged because of their mandate to deliver on certain interventions. I give an example of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. They are helping us to eliminate the trafficking in persons. Trafficking in persons where girls are trafficked. For instance, in Amudat, they are trafficked across Kenya border, one, to go and be mutilated. Yes, because in Amudat, most of the agencies are working there, so female genital mutilation might not be conducively done now. So they traffic the girls across the border and they do it on the other side. So we have to link up with the officials on the other side to see that it's stopped. They don't allow it to be done on the other side. Besides the female genital mutilation, they also traffic girls for sexual purposes. So if we don't engage the officials on the other side of the border, it means that we might eliminate it in Amudat as one of the districts where we are, and then they cross to the next district on the other side. So we bring in these ministries to see that they help us on some of those things. There's a lot that we do with the other ministries, but I won't go into doing that. Frank talked about the initiatives, so you'll be able to get more details from Private Sector Foundation. But I also wanted to mention the call center that is run by Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. So Martin, in all this, please provide the details of that call center, because many people might not go to James's office, but they can pick a call and use that call center. They're allowed. Because James, they might come to your office, but you might not have the responses of how to handle. And yet they are professionals that can handle some of those. And it's not that they will accuse you, blame you for not doing anything, but they will invite you if need be, so that you work together to deal with the situation, especially if it's something that has gone beyond manageable levels. So they have the call centers, and with the civil society, we have legal aid services. So some of the victims can get help. We also work with the local councils in the 7 districts, especially the local council courts. When a woman experiences acts of violence, usually they go to the LC chairperson or the chairperson of the Women's Council to report what is going on. It could be in the home, it could be in someone in the communities doing it. So the first point of call, usually in our communities, is the local councils. So we are also working with the local councils to see that they are able to respond. Because previously they would say, Beatrice, so Mugambe beat you, did this and that. That is your private matter. Go and deal with it, talk to the clan. You know, they would just kind of send you away. But with the awareness and consciousness raising done with the local councils, especially in the districts of the program, we see that some of them are responding more positively. They welcome you and they find ways of dealing with the matter. We would love to see that expanded. I mean, if the project had all the resources, but through the different stakeholders, we think that we'll have a ripple effect so that other local councils in the country can do that. And so that's also another stakeholder. The fourth is the private sector and the purpose for our being here. So that gives you a summary of the Spotlight initiative that we are implementing together with the Private Sector Foundation. And in terms of districts, we are in Amudat, Arua, Kampala, Kasese, Kitgum, Chegegwa, and Tororo. From Arua, there was a breakup district, that is Terego. So in this last bit of our program, we have Terego. So in total, we have 8 districts. Ladies and gentlemen, despite the important gains, we note that women are still significantly underrepresented in leadership positions. And I think David and the rest of the panel hinted to that. And we still have a long way to go until they are fully recognized, equally to men for their contribution in the workplace. It's also not unusual for women to receive less pay, fewer benefits, fewer opportunities to be passed by for promotions for which they are well qualified. Gender discrimination, gender-based violence, and sexual harassment in the workplace go against the employment laws of Uganda. So this is not alien. It's not because European Union funded this that it's something that is coming from outside. Even our laws outlaw gender discrimination and gender-based violence. So we see the private sector as a key driver of growth and development. It accounts for majority of well-paying jobs. It's well positioned to play an indispensable role in women's advancement, both within the company and the communities. The 2030 agenda acknowledges the role of the diverse private sector in the implementation of the new agenda, and it calls on all businesses to apply their creativity and innovation to solve development challenges. Today, businesses provide 60% of the GDP and 80% of capital flows and 90% of jobs in developing countries. So the sector cannot be ignored. Gender-based violence as a socio-cultural issue manifests itself in different forms. One of the forms is the sexual harassment. Josephine alluded to that. Given that businesses operate within society, they are not immune from experiencing social issues that continue to plague the country. The national level economic costs of GBV are widely recognized. However, the cost and impact of GBV on the private sector and the individual firm in the individual company is not well understood. That's why some people might think these GBV issues are, for the women's organizations, for those organizations. But as a company, you stand also to lose. Business costs associated with GBV include absenteeism, loss of productivity, high turnover, and time spent outside of work at court or participating in services for survivors. Why at court? Sometimes people take you to court for not handling the issues. So you spend time going to court. Or some of your teams are assigned responsibilities to deal with the issues. Talk to her, talk to him. The time we should have been spent in production. People can be absent, sometimes for genuine reasons, but sometimes it's because there's an issue, there's a situation in the office and it's not yet handled well. We have a study of Fortune 500 companies which estimated the cost of GBV to be around $6.7 million a year in absenteeism, low productivity, and employee turnover. You might say, yeah, they can go, we'll find others. But the process you go through to retrain, I think David alluded to the resourceful women that he came across. You lose those ones because of harassment. You have to train others, and in the process you are spending money, and sometimes you are losing on business. So at this critical time, it is important that the private sector takes a clear, public, and deliberate stance on zero tolerance on GBV, both in the workplace and in society. By taking up this leadership role, businesses can position themselves to positively use their power by engaging in internal and multi-sectoral initiatives which seek to prevent and eliminate GBV. As UNDP, we commend Fireworks Advertising for being a disruptor of the status quo, making a pathway for the advertising sector to be an avenue of change by creating collective action platforms that can build scale and systemic impact to address GBV in the advertising industry. UNDP, in partnership with the Private Sector Foundation, will continue to engage the private sector as an important partner, playing a central role to address and eliminate GBV. As I conclude, I would like to thank the European Union, the government of Uganda, Fireworks Advertising, and all other stakeholders present here for your continued partnership with the United Nations Development Programme. It is my hope that at this breakfast dialogue, we have this opportunity to engage further on the gender issues, but also make solid commitments towards achieving equality and transformation in the workplace. As the country continues to grapple with these issues, it is important for companies to make tangible changes which will drive the gender equality agenda forward. Companies are ticking the boxes on paper, but sometimes are falling short on implementation. The Spotlight Initiative provides an opportunity to prove that the journey to end violence against women is not just symbolic. It is urgent that the private sector pledges to address the needs of those who have faced sexual and gender-based violence in the workplace. It is also my hope that the outcomes of this breakfast meeting will generate commitments from key players in the industry. And Mitch mentioned we have all the big players in the industry. So we look forward to the big commitments from the industry so that your contributions can make this make both women and men enjoy working in the industry. I pledge the continued support of the United Nations Development Programme and the wider United Nations in Uganda to journey with you on creating a sustainable and inclusive society. I thank you and wish you all fruitful deliberations. When I've made the remarks of my boss, I don't say anything.
Thank you so much. That was quite an informative speech over there. We are so glad to have you here, and we are so glad to be in partnership with you. Right at this juncture, I would like to invite our Group CEO, Frank Muthusi, again, to just briefly, in a minute, unveil this campaign.
So we're going to do something a bit interesting. Yes, I'm going to talk about the campaign. But I also want to take us a group picture for the panel, Madam Beatrice, Grace as well. Then we're also going to put our hands, I don't know, what do you call it? We're going to put our hands to, what is it called? Like a palm print, signifying our commitment towards the gender-based fight. So what you're going to be seeing on our social media, billboards, will be artwork that is looking like this. See the unseen, end gender-based violence against women in advertising. Creativity loses when you turn a blind eye to the gender-based violence. Still same call to action. The bottom line loses when you don't have women at the top. So this is going to be a rallying call, and we're going to develop more artworks. Even some of the things that came out from the panel discussion. So you're going to be seeing a lot of that. I'm going to request even other agencies, when you see this, when Uganda Advertising Association is posting on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, just like, retweet, do all that kind of stuff. Cool? All right. So let me ask, so we're going to have a photo opportunity, where I'm going to ask Madam Beatrice, Grace, I'm going to ask James Onen, I'm going to ask Mitch. Are we all going to stand, or some people are going to sit? I think some people should sit, some people should stand. So just maybe come and we shall organize ourselves from up here. David, the entire panel, Josephine, Tina, sorry. Some people are worse than pandemic. If we go cause my peace, then I go take my leave. If we no be money, I think do not disturb me, please. Yes. If we go cause my peace, that's some expensive shit. If we no be money, Yes. Tina. There. Okay. Let me move closer. Hey, the lady's sitting, eh? The lady's. Okay, maybe I will. Okay. Let me just sit. Okay, we'll take a picture. Yes.
But I know be hypocrite. I dey pray make you get your own too. See bad times will never last. Hey, let me know my last. Life comes at you so fast. Small time you don't become waiting you hate you. Okay, they hate their lives and they're lonely. No energy for nobody. We know they happy for me. Okay, you hate your life and you lonely. No energy for nobody. No waste your time, man. I know see you.
And I've been living fast life, but I see it in slow. Oh no, and you see my lifestyle, I got G's in the turbo. See many people there outside where they feed man's oboe. Oh no, and me I stand the defender like Joseph Yobo. But girl say she want Netflix and chill, so I chatty get even warning. If you fall in love, clearly certain. You go to breakfast, I'm not capping. Can you see dripple, I'm not catchy. I'm not faking this, no fugazi. You see these feelings, I'm not catching. I'm on quest and feet, I just want it. Happiness, yeah, yeah. If I broke, now my business, yeah, yeah. I'm not sure you go bright, yeah, yeah. All I care for the night, yeah, yeah. Happiness, yeah, yeah. If I broke, now my business, yeah, yeah. I'm not sure you go bright, yeah, yeah. All I care for the night. Excessive, it be the reason why your baba want to jealous me. If you want to take I'm serious, I do top speed. No fit to resonate, I'm on a different frequency. I don't think it's necessary. I be done with just somebody that could do like me. Man, I be like Musala coming off the right wing. I got to your defender, you no need to tell me. I'm a horse, finesse. You know, say me, I'm a snack. I can let I go carry go. If me, I got money past you. If you're not careful, finesse. You know, say me, I'm a snack. Okay, I go carry go. If me, I got money past you. If you're not careful, finesse. If I broke, now my business. I'ma show you go bright. All I care for the night. If I broke, now my business. I'ma show you go bright. All I care for the night.
By now, oh, I don't wanna live my life for you, live my life for you. All over the news, all over the news. Only God and I know the kind of thing I do, the kind of thing we do. Oh, man, I thank God I got the lead. Say God no ungodly. Oluwa I ain't comforting me. When these people they come body me, man I thank God I got the lead. Say God no ungodly. Oluwa I ain't comforting me. When these people they come body me, it's why I die sometimes. A little Henny and ice.
All right, guys, let's have you participate in this activity. Feel free to walk up here, dip your hand in the paint, not so much so that you don't get too much paint onto your palm. Just enough for you to make the print. And there is a washing station right to my right.
money, no time for your shit. Money kulapo, I don't care for your hate. Me no fighting. Me no fighting. Throwing down drums from bungalow up there. I did my penthouse, you can't even reach me. Me no frightened. It is not your fight, stand down. I'm not the one, calm down. You know I'm not your problem. You can't be me, why bother? Don't have your time now. Only move me bow down. Obambi no farabale. Oboya go lari mole. Okay.
DJ, you can please reduce the volume of the music. Thank you. Guys, don't be quick to leave. We are going to have a group photo as the last activity. I think we can have it right here, just in front of the backdrop. Yes, all of us. I'll just request, I need some help. Yes, taking down. Thank you so much, Frank. So let's all come to the stage and take a group photo just before we exit. One last group photo. Let's do this quickly. Let's make it short and sweet. Let's just get onto the stage and have a group photo quite quickly. Let's have everyone in this photo. Let's have everyone in this photo. Mage, Jamson, group photo, please. One last photo. Enough. This is like your wedding day. Again. Everyone, let's have everyone on the stage. Walter.
Kilometers. I don't come kilometers. I don't walk many kilometers. Learn from the teacher. I don't take for the game, she no pitas. I decide bad mind from a distance. Not this sweet, I be all on my pitas. When you come, make I give you the gist. But the last time somebody did it like this. So much I saw me bum back like wrist. That's why everybody hating on me like wrist. Kilometers. For the game, she no pitas. I decide bad mind from a distance. Not this sweet, I be all on my pitas. Oh, don't go me, show you the confirm.